Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving straight into the real beginnings of Bruce Lee. His Wing Chun start in 1950s Hong Kong.
Yeah, forget the later movie stuff for a second. This is the foundation.
Right. And it helps to picture Hong Kong back then, doesn't it?
Oh,
Mid-50s.
definitely. It was just bustling. A really dense, dynamic city, practically vibrating with energy. Neon signs lighting up these crowded streets.
Mm.
And martial arts schools were, well, they were everywhere. Part of the fabric of the city. So much tradition, so much skill on display.
And into that scene steps young Bruce Lee, Lee Jun fan, right? Born in 1940.
Yeah, just a kid, really, but already kind of a veteran of street fights, believe it or not.
He sounds like such a mix. Part, I don't know, street punk,
Yeah,
but also clearly someone thinking bigger.
exactly. A bit of a dreamer mixed with that toughness.
Yeah.
And you got to ask, what was driving him? It wasn't just kid stuff, fighting for fun.
Well,
There was a real hunger there to win, definitely,
mm.
but also in a city just saturated with kung fu style.
He needed something more.
You needed an edge, yeah. Like, just being tough wasn't enough. He was looking for that advantage.
Which brings us to Wing Chun. And it wasn't just another martial art for him, was it?
No, not at all. It seems like it was genuinely transformative. It wasn't just about punches and kicks. There was this whole strategic layer.
Almost intellectual, you could say, like the chess of fighting.
That's a great way to put it. It really engages the mind. It's not just brute force. It's about structure, angles, efficiency. Very smart.
So how did he actually find his way to it?
Well, the story goes he was spurred by, a bit of humiliation, losing a street fight pretty badly, made him realize he needed something more structured, more effective. So he went looking for proper training.
Then that path led him straight to Yip Man.
The legendary Yip Man, yeah.
Yeah.
A pivotal figure, no question. The grandmaster who really held the keys to Wing Chun for Bruce.
And Yip Man himself had only recently arrived in Hong Kong, right? Fleeing mainland China.
That's right, came over in 1949. So he was establishing his school, bringing this unique art form just a few years before Bruce walked in.
Now, about the training itself, I think a lot of people imagine Bruce spending like decades with Yip Man.
Yeah, that's a common misconception, like
Yeah.
some long, drawn-out movie montage.
Right.
But the reality is, it was much shorter and maybe more intense because of it. Roughly 5 years.
Only 5 years from when to when?
From about 1954 until he left the U.S. in 1959. So, yeah, not decades. But those 5 years, incredibly intense, incredibly formative. They laid the groundwork for, well, everything that came after.
Okay, 5 intense years. So what exactly was Wing Chun giving this kid? For those of us not deep into martial arts, what are the key ideas?
Well, at its core, Wing Chun is about efficiency, directness. Take the center line theory.
Okay.
It's basically about protecting the most vital part of your body, the vertical line down the center, while attacking your opponent's center line. Simple, direct, effective. Like guarding the most important thing you have while aiming for their weakest spot.
So very focused, no wasted effort.
Exactly. That leads right into the economy of motion principle. Wing Chun movements are short, direct. No big, flashy, looping actions unless they achieve something immediately.
Like a one-word text reply instead of a long email.
Huh. Yeah, sort of like that. Get the job done with minimum fuss, minimum energy. Very practical.
Okay, efficient, direct. What else makes it stand out?
Simultaneous attack and defense. This is a big one. Instead block, then strike. Wing Chun tries to do both at the same time. You intercept and attack in one fluid motion.
That sounds tricky, like patting your head and rubbing your belly, but way more high stakes.
It requires coordination, definitely, and timing. It shuts down the opponent's ability to react. Very clever.
And then there's Chi Sao. Sticky hands. That sounds intriguing.
Oh, Chi Sao's unique. It's a training drill, not really sparring, focused purely on sensitivity. Tactile sensitivity.
How does that work?
You maintain contact with your partner's forearms, feeling their pressure, their intention, their energy. The goal is to react instantly to their movement, using their force, redirecting it.
Wow, so you're almost reading their mind through touch.
Kind of, yeah. It's like this intense, close-range conversation where touch tells you everything you need to know to counter immediately.
Right.
Like high stakes, arm wrestling twister, maybe.
Huh. Okay, I get the picture. It's fascinating to think how Bruce, with his street smarts, must have taken to this. It sounds incredibly practical.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Accounts suggest he really appreciated how real it was, how applicable it was to actual fighting, center line, economy, simultaneous action. That's what works when things get messy.
So let's picture him training. Not some fancy gym. We're talking 1950s Hong Kong.
Right. Think cramped rooms, sometimes practicing on rooftops, even backyards. Hot, humid Hong Kong weather.
Intense.
Very. And relentless practice of the fundamental forms, like Siu Nim Tao. That first form is all about building structure, balance, focus, just drilling it again and again.
And the wooden dummy, the mukjong, that's such an iconic image.
It is. And crucial for Wing Chun. It lets you practice techniques, angles, power generation on a fixed target that gives you feedback, like a tireless sparring partner.
Bruce was really dedicated to that, wasn't he?
Incredibly so. Worked on it constantly. He even built his own when he moved to the U.S. later. That tells you how important he thought it was.
It really does. Okay, but here's a curveball. I read he was also a cha-cha champion.
Yes. It seems totally unrelated, doesn't it?
It kind of does. How does dancing fit in?
Well, think about it. Cha-cha requires amazing rhythm, balance, really intricate footwork.
True.
Those are all essential in fighting. The agility, the coordination he developed dancing, that definitely translated. You can almost picture him using that same footwork to dodge punches, maybe with a bit of swagger.
That's brilliant. Slipping punches with cha-cha rhythm. But his training wasn't all smooth sailing, right? His background caused some issues.
That's a really important piece of the context, yeah. Hong Kong society back then had its prejudices. Bruce's mother was half German, Grace Ho, so he was mixed race.
And that caused friction.
Unfortunately, yes. Some of Yip Man's other students weren't exactly welcoming. There was definitely some prejudice he had to deal with.
So he had to prove himself even more.
Pretty much. Not just in regular sparring, but sometimes in, well, less formal challenges, rooftop fights, things like that. It wasn't just boys being boys. It was about earning respect, validating his skill, especially when facing that kind of skepticism.
Man, so by 1959, when he leaves for Seattle, he's only 18.
Just 18, yeah.
He's already the skilled Wing Chun guy, but also someone who's had to fight for his place, literally. But he didn't just, stick rigidly to Wing Chun after that, did he?
No, not at all. That's what's so interesting about Bruce Lee. He wasn't just a good student. He had this incredibly analytical mind.
He started questioning it.
Exactly. He respected Wing Chun immensely. It was his foundation. But he also looked at it critically. He saw its strengths, primarily in close-range fighting, but also what he perceived as limitations.
Like what?
Things like maybe a lack of diverse kicking techniques for longer ranges, or not much focus on grappling or ground fighting.
And that critical thinking, that drive to find something more complete, that led to Jeet Kune Do.
Precisely. Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It was his own creation, his personal expression of martial arts. But crucially, it was built on that Wing Chun foundation.
But he added other things.
Oh, yeah. He borrowed freely from whatever worked. Footwork from Western boxing, strategy from fencing, elements from other kung fu styles, maybe even wrestling. Whatever was effective, he considered it.
The philosophy behind it is fascinating, using no way as a way. What does that really mean?
It means ultimate adaptability. Not being locked into one style, one set of answers. Wing Chun gave him principles, but JKD was about fluidity, responding to the moment.
So whatever works, works.
Basically, yeah. Pure pragmatism, be like water, as he famously said. Adapt to the situation, don't be trapped by dogma.
And he wasn't just a fighter, he was apparently quite the showman when teaching, too.
He definitely had charisma and a unique way of explaining things. He wasn't afraid to critique traditional methods, sometimes with humor.
Like the fighting with a typewriter analogy.
Exactly. His way of saying some traditional stuff was just too clunky, too inefficient compared to a direct modern approach. He loved to provoke thought, challenge the status quo.
Now, with a legend like Bruce, myths definitely pop up. Let's clear some air about his Wing Chun training. Fact versus fiction.
Good idea. It's important. One common idea is that Yip Man taught him everything, one-on-one.
Not true.
Not quite. Yip Man was the master, the main teacher, absolutely. But senior students, guys like Wang Shenlong, William Chung, they were heavily involved too, especially with sparring and practical application. It was more of a school environment with Yip Man overseeing it.
Okay. What about the story that he got kicked out because of his mixed heritage?
Yeah, you hear that sometimes. But the evidence really points to him leaving voluntarily to go to college in the U.S. While the prejudice from some students was likely real, there's no solid proof Yip Man formally expelled him for it.
Got it. And did he master all of Wing Chun in those 5 years? Every single technique, every weapon?
He definitely got the core. The three main hand forms, Chi Sao, the wooden dummy training the essentials. But the more advanced weapon forms, like the butterfly swords or the long pole, probably not. He left relatively early in the overall curriculum,
Um,
still developing.
right. And was Wing Chun literally the only thing he knew before leaving Hong Kong?
It was his primary foundational art during that key period. But he likely had some exposure to other things earlier through his father, and certainly once he got to the U.S., he became a sponge. Boxing, wrestling, fencing, even ballet for movement. He studied everything. He was obsessed with movement and combat efficiency.
So Wing Chun was the crucial starting block, but not the entire race.
Perfectly put, it gave him the tools and, just as importantly, a philosophical framework efficiency, directness that he built everything else on.
And you can really see those Wing Chun roots in his movies, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Those fast, short-range hand combinations, the straight line attacks, that incredible economy of motion. It's pure Wing Chun, amplified by his own athleticism and adaptations. Think Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon.
The yellow tracksuit.
Huh, yeah. Even there, the underlying principles are visible. It gave him that unique screen presence, that authenticity.
And his impact went way beyond martial arts movies. He really changed perceptions in Hollywood, didn't he? Challenged stereotypes.
Massively. In the 70s, seeing an Asian man portrayed with such power, skill, charisma, it was revolutionary. He broke down barriers, and his genuine martial arts skill, rooted in Wing Chun, was undeniable. He wasn't faking it.
It's amazing that Wing Chun itself is still so widespread today, 2025, and there are schools all over the world teaching Yip Man's lineage.
It's a testament to its effectiveness and depth. A living tradition.
Although you sometimes hear concerns, right, that maybe some modern schools focus more on the business side than the hardcore combat effectiveness Bruce cared about.
Yeah, that critique exists. The commercialization versus the pure application. You can only guess what Bruce himself would think about schools that stray too far from that practical, direct core he valued so much.
He probably wouldn't hold back his opinion.
Likely not. But beyond specific schools, what's the real, enduring legacy of that Wing Chun period for him and for us?
What do you think it is?
For me, it's that principle of adaptability. He learned Wing Chun deeply, then he questioned it, adapted it, integrated other things. He wasn't trapped.
Using no way as way.
Exactly. And that's a lesson for everything, isn't it? Not just fighting. How do you adapt to challenges, learn, evolve, find your most effective way? That's the core message, I think.
So summing up, that Wing Chun deep dive in the 50s,
Mhm.
it wasn't just learning moves, it was the spark. It shaped his skills, his thinking, and set him on the path to becoming this global force.
It really highlights that blend of, physical skill and intellectual grasp that Wing Chun offers. It wasn't just about being tough. It was about understanding why things work. That intelligence fueled his innovation.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About your own center line. What's vital? What needs protecting? And what's your most direct path to action?
That's a great takeaway. Applying those principles to life. Bruce's journey, starting right there with Yip Man, encourages that kind of thinking. Be direct, be efficient, but always be ready to adapt. Be like water.
Well said. Maybe we all need a bit more of that Bruce Lee focus. Probably skip the rooftop fights, though.
Yeah, probably best to skip those.
But if things feel slow, just channel that energy, right? Speed it up. And speaking of covering ground quickly, we really got into the weeds here, thanks to really digging into those primary sources and archives, trying to separate the solid facts from all the myths that build up over time.
It's been fascinating to trace it back to the beginning.